Hello. Well, welcome to another edition of Senior Beat. This morning I'm happy to have as my guest District Attorney Thomas Quinn. And he just recently stopped at the Senior Center for a few minutes to see our first Under the Tent program started. So I'm happy to, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your position. It's an elected position, isn't it?
It's an elected position, a 4-year term. I've been the district attorney for a little over 6 years. Initially was appointed by Governor Baker, and then ran in special election, and then ran for a full-year term in 2018. I have oversight of the prosecution of criminal cases throughout Bristol County in the 4 courts, New Bedford, Fall River, Attleboro, and Taunton.
Oh, that's a big area.
It's a big area. There's a lot of cases. You have 4 cities that cases come from. So I've tried to pay attention to all of the county and put our resources, sufficient resources in each court to adequately prosecute the cases that come before us.
Well, I'll start with a few questions. Can you tell us about any recent scams that the public should be aware of?
Well, I've heard from several people that there is this dating scam where primarily women are solicited by scam artists, and they try to enter into this fraudulent relationship to obtain money, and unfortunately they are successful. I was just discussing that with the person who heads my Elder Affairs and Financial Crimes Unit. Said there was a case in which someone had been solicited and clearly fraud, but the individual wants to go forward and is upset that we're even investigating it. So I think you have to be careful of any solicitation of money in providing personal information, Social Security number, credit card number in particular. I had my own aunt call me a while back, about 6 weeks ago, very upset because somebody called and got her Social Security number somehow. So you should not be providing any information over the phone to unsolicited callers. There's also an Amazon scam that's been popular where someone purporting to be from the Amazon company will call up and say, we've had fraud, there's a fraud alert on your account, could you fill out this information, which includes, of course, credit card and or Social Security. It's clearly a scam, but obviously people might say, okay, it's a fraud alert. There's a lot of fraud out there. So it's unfortunate, especially in the last year with COVID, that people are more isolated than they have been before, and people who are unsavory individuals are trying to take advantage of the elderly and everybody, but in particular people who are vulnerable and alone. So you have to be on alert for it. There's also been a scam that's gone on for a number of years that is the grandparent scam, where someone will call up a grandparent and say that your grandchild is in jeopardy, in jail, or needs money, and if you want this to go away, you need to send the money to this account. In fact, in one of the cases we came across, I think it was in the beginning of my tenure, somebody had said that the grandchild was in jail in the state of Washington, and that to send the money to Mexico. So obviously that is fishy, to say the least, but unfortunately people get jarred by that. If you're a grandparent, somebody says to me, your grandson's in jail, he needs bail money, or he needs this, or she needs that, people could be respond to that and give money, and clearly people do fall for these scams because they keep calling. So you just have to be on guard. Unsolicited calls looking for Social Security number, money, I would just hang up. Most of these companies are not going to call you on the phone if it's a question of providing money. You could initiate something if you are making, obviously, a donation to a viable charity, or have some type of customer service issue with utilities. That might be one thing if you're initiating the call, but there's just there are too many people out there trying to take advantage of the elderly and other people.
I know we've had quite a few people call us and say that they got calls about getting pushed up the list to get the vaccine. That was one scam that was going around.
That's correct. The COVID scam is another one, the last year, that they're getting calls saying, you've been pushed up the list, but provide the information. That's the key. It's not just, you've been pushed up the list, we'll see you Monday at 10 o'clock. It's always requesting personal information that they can use to commit fraud. So obviously, people need to be aware of that, especially in light of the increase in the number of vaccines that are happening. I'm sure people will call and say, do you need a ride, and you need some information, and try to access people's, at times, goodwill and vulnerability that leads to people being victimized.
As soon as the governor announced that a companion could take somebody 75 and over to a clinic and they would be able to get vaccinated, on a Facebook page in North Attleboro, one woman wrote, anyone that needs a ride, private message me, because she wanted to get the vaccine. And so I reported it to the North Attleboro police to see if maybe they could just follow up with her. And I didn't want to get involved in the whole thing, but we had several people call us and say, my neighbor offered to give me a ride. I said, well, if you know the person, that's different. That's not a scam. If your neighbor said, gee, I'd like to get vaccinated and I know you need a ride, so do you want me to take you? Well, I would jump on that offer, but I wouldn't jump on the offer where somebody's that you don't know is just saying, call me, So.
Yeah, it's human, it's the bad side of human nature. Every situation, every calamity, people are trying to take advantage of people, and people. You just have to be very careful and on guard. I mean, if your neighbor calls and says, "I will give you a ride," that's fine, as you said. But the neighbor's not asking for money, or your Social Security information, or your credit card. So there, unfortunately, are a lot of individuals out there trying to take advantage of, especially our elderly, who are alone and vulnerable in many cases. And don't have the support of somebody else to say no or not pursue or get involved or entangled in these scams.
I know that also people were posting their vaccinated, their card, and their name was on it and their birthday and where they went to get the shot. And there was, recently there was something on the news about that you shouldn't show your name and your birthday, put a thumbs up or cover the personal information so they can see the card, but not all the other personal information.
Yeah, I understand that it's a different world now with technology, but I certainly would discourage people from putting their personal information on Facebook or whatever technology they're using. What is the purpose of that? If you want to say, I received my first vaccine today,
just say it.
Say it. But to put your personal information up there, I would discourage that.
Let's see. Any recent high-profile cases or convictions that you wish to let people know about, specifically the conviction of Ivan Keith?
Well, ironically, there's been almost no jury trials for a year, which is something the system has never experienced in modern history because of COVID. There was a mistrial declared in a murder case a little over a year ago when everything started to shut down in the middle of March. We were able to solve, during the past 2 years, the case of Ivan Keith, who was a serial rapist. He brutally raped 4 women. Two of them were in our county in Taunton and Easton. He had a history of sexual crimes. When he was forced to give a DNA sample, he fled to Maine, where he remained there for a number of years, close to 20. We eventually, because of the serious nature of these crimes, we pursued leads. We eventually got, through enhanced technology with familiar DNA, got a connection to him. We eventually located him in Maine and tracked him down and brought him into custody. And he recently pled guilty at the age of 61 to all of the 4 brutal rapes with 2 in our county, and received a sentence of approximately 45 years, which is essentially life in prison. But that was the use of DNA technology, in particular this male-based evidence that can be used to get a link in the chain of a family, and with obviously other evidence led to this case being solved. And I was gratified, very gratified, for the victims who have been through hell, to say the least, with what having to experience that type of violence. So that's was a significant case for the office. We actually, because of COVID, the Supreme Judicial Court is allowed in Superior Court, where the most serious cases are tried, a defendant could claim a 6-person jury. Generally, it's a 12-person jury. So I don't recall any trial in Superior Court where murders and sexual assaults and the most serious cases are tried being done before anything other than a 12-person jury. But recently a defendant did waive the right to a 12-person jury and was convicted by a jury of 6, which is unique. But those, there really hasn't been, with no trials the first 3 or 4 months of the COVID pandemic. The court was kind of shut down. I think things are picking up, and we're just hopeful that in the near future we can have jury trials, because without jury trials you really can't move these cases through the system.
I know there was a case in Attleboro, a young woman was killed, and it's already been a year since. Nothing's really gone on because the court was closed. A little while ago they had it in the paper that they were still waiting. It's tough on the families.
It's very difficult on the families. They've been through enough grief in the process. In the case of a death, having to live with the death of a loved one, and then waiting for justice in the court system. So it's been difficult. We can only ask for patience and the hope that in the near future we can start resuming jury trials and get these cases prioritized and prosecuted as best we can. So we're waiting on the court system to finalize the plan where they're going to start bringing back 12-person juries to hear these cases in Superior Court, and in the District Court 6-person juries. So I feel badly for them. We're doing the best we can to move cases forward, but again, at this point, unless a defendant is willing to plead guilty, we have no firm trial dates at this point. I hope that will change in the next month or 2.
Well, at least there looks like there's a little bit of hope out there with people getting vaccinated, that they'll hopefully by July is the target date. We keep hearing, in July, but I'll be doing a little bit better. Let's see, another question here. Dangerousness hearings and bail reform. These are topics that are often in the news. Can you talk a little more about that and why these are important and your position on these issues?
Well, I think holding dangerous people in custody is very important to the safety of the public. That's always been a priority of mine. I have pushed for change in legislation making it easier to hold people in custody who have been determined to be dangers to the community. The public has a right to be protected from those people. When they're released, in some instances, they commit new crimes, which is no surprise. So I'm working with the legislature on bail reform. Unfortunately, again, because of the pandemic, things have been kind of at a standstill. I think people who commit violent crimes, who are engaged in serious drug dealing, based on their records, should be kept off the street and held pending trial until their cases are resolved. That's always been very important to me. I think that at times there's been over the years been a system of cash bail, which can be arbitrary. this particular approach is if a defendant does not belong out on the streets because of their dangerous behavior, repetitive criminal behavior, they should be held without bail so it does not discriminate, so to speak, against anybody. You review the facts, you review their record, and you make a decision based on that. So hopefully we can make progress with that, but I think it's important to protect the public from individuals who are dangerous and have a history of violence and/or drug dealing, serious drug dealing.
I know that, a lot of people talk about all the things that are happening in the nation, and it's just hard to believe that people are just at the grocery store and somebody randomly comes in and shoots a whole bunch of people that just decide to go grocery shopping. It's just, it's a scary world out there.
Yes, it is. There is a lot of evil in the world. We just had Easter Sunday, so as you said, there is hope. I think Easter can give people hope, and also hope with the vaccine that we are moving forward, as you indicated. But there is a lot of violence out there that upends people's lives. We see it on a day-to-day basis in the district attorney's office. It is very tragic to see how people are hurt and their lives upended. But that's just that's human nature at work, and we're doing our best to fairly and appropriately prosecute these cases that come before us and hold people accountable, be merciful, so to speak, if it's appropriate, but the public has to be protected from dangerous people who are hurting women and children, contributing to the increase in overdoses in our communities, and violently hurting people.
Well, on a positive note, I would like to just recognize your office for providing the senior center with their $970 funding so that we could increase some of our health and wellness programs. Can you tell us a little bit about where that money comes from?
Well, I'm happy to be able to fund that program. I just met with a number of the ladies who were working out there. The elder abuse and elder fraud has been something that I made a priority in my office. Our elderly have given much to making this country great. They deserve respect and, to the extent we can, protection from abuse, as they should be enjoying their latter years. I have community funding, which is money comes from drug forfeiture proceeds. When an individual is convicted, money related to drug dealing can be forfeited to the state. So I try to use that money to fund programs that are affiliated with my important mission of the district attorney's office, such as protecting the elderly, protecting vulnerable victims, and I'm happy to be able to do that. The ladies there who are working out seem to, it's important for their both physical and mental well-being, so I think that's important.
There were some men also.
I did see a couple of men, but which is good. I was good. I was tempted to join in, but it was a little late. So that's what I'm trying to do in an appropriate way, provide assistance to some of these community-based programs, again, that are part of our mission for the district attorney's office.
Well, it was well received, and we will put it to good use. So
well, that's good to hear.
We appreciate it. Is there anything that you'd like to mention before we close up? And I'm just going to give a little update on what's going on at the senior center.
I would just say, I think with respect to the elderly and everybody, as you mentioned, I think there's reason for hope that we can move, past or forward with the pandemic. It certainly has upended many people's lives, but I think there's reason for hope now. People are getting vaccinated. It seems like that's going well, and it's going to give people the peace of mind, again, especially our elder folks or people with medical conditions, that they can at least have some peace of mind that they are protected from what's turned out to be this deadly virus, and can have enjoyment in life, as opposed to, the last year. Certainly there have been significant limitations on people's ability to congregate and meet. As you know, I'm sure that's impacted the elderly significantly. So I think there's reason for hope. People, again, getting vaccinated, and hopefully, we can move forward and get back to our normal life sooner rather than later.
Well, we're looking forward to opening our doors again too, and the magic date is probably July. So, but we're doing the best we can. We're an outdoor program, and the space under the tent is actually bigger than our dining room. So, we purchased individual tables, so each person will have a small table about this size to sit out when they're eating, and we'll put people 6 feet apart, like they do in the restaurants. So I just want to let people know that any of the programs that we offer, you should have got your April newsletter. If you didn't, you can call the center, and we'll be happy to provide you with one. If you are going to any of the programs that are listed as being held in the tent, including the exercise classes, you have to call up and pre-register, because the space is limited to so many, but in the 6-foot area. So we'd like to know that you're coming, so we can have the right amount of tables and chairs out there for whatever the event might be. So we do have a few things coming up. Pebble art class under the tent on April 20th from 1 o'clock. That class is free for 10 people. And also Jay Elias from Dyer Lake will be here on Monday, April 26th at 2 o'clock. And his Live and Learn program this time it's a whole new world. He's going to talk about how our lives have been upended in many ways, both big and small, and what we're anticipating. Let's see. We still offer Zoom programs, and those are all listed. The popular one seems to be on Monday at 1, and that's Dollar Tree Bingo. We still offer grab-and-go lunches. If anyone's interested, they can call the center. You just come around 8:30, 8:45, and pick up your lunch, and then you can heat it up for lunch. The walking group is still out there in full force. They're now walking Tuesdays and Thursdays, and also on Wednesday evening at 5:30. And the schedule's on our website, and it's also in the newsletter. We have a couple of carry-out cafes coming up. Wednesday, April 14th, is Creamy Broccoli Chicken Cheddar Bake. And Wednesday, April 28th, is Hawaiian Roll Roast Beef and Cheese Sliders. Sounds good. And other than that, everything is listed, and we're doing our best to provide as much programs as we can, whether those people choose to be virtual or if they choose to come in person. So we will ask that you drive slowly when you're coming into the parking lot to park, because there will be people wandering around the parking lot that normally you wouldn't see. So again, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule, and I know that the seniors were glad to see you this morning too. They're very happy about the funding, and anytime we can get any kind of funding is always a good thing. It helps them. They all donate towards the program too, but it helps us to. Maybe there might be one or two that can't afford the $2 donation. So again, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Pete.